Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adnan Ahmed and I'm your PMP instructor. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, any concerns, just contact me freely and I will be explaining the sequence of processes in few minutes. Alright, so here we are talking about the sequence of processes, 47 processes of the project management.
Yes.
Now the first thing we do is, we start the project with developing project charter. So when the charter is ready, you sign this off, you move on, and the next process, identify stakeholders. So once you identify stakeholder, you need to pay attention to the names. The process name is identify stakeholder, and the output will be the stakeholder register or the list of stakeholders, information of stakeholders. So now you identify stakeholders. This will complete your initiation group. You move on to the next, which is planning. Now in planning, there are some processes, if you can see they are highlighted in blue area. They're all the planning processes. There are 10 knowledge areas and each one of them has a planning process, such as plan quality, plan communication, plan risk, plan procurement, plan cost, plan schedule. So you have all these processes over here. You can do them at the same time, you can do them in parallel, so there is no major relationship between them. But yes, if you can do the communication and scope plan and your stakeholder plan in the beginning, it's much better. So once these plans are done, and we assume that these plans are done, after you identify stakeholders, you move on to collect requirements. So once you collect requirements, you end up with the list of requirements. Also, a traceability matrix, so you can trace which requirement is coming from which stakeholder. And then further you move on to define scope. And once you define scope, next is to make your create WBS. Once you create WBS, you estimate resources, right? We define scope and then we create WBS. Once the WBS is ready, you have the last level in the WBS called work package. Work package, you further break it down into activities. So the next process is define activities. Then there is the sequence. You define activities, you sequence activities, you estimate activity resources, you estimate activity duration, and then you develop your schedule. So 5 processes in a sequence in time management. Now here you end up with your schedule, and then you estimate your cost, determine budget. Put them all together and you end up with your project management plan. Now in the planning also, with other processes in parallel, your risk plan is ready, and then you move on to identify risk. Now once you have the risks identified, the next step is to do qualitative analysis. So you know which risk is high, low or medium. And after qualitative analysis is done, you do quantitative analysis. So you know the quantity. You're talking about the X amount for each risk, the money. So you assign the money for each risk and you know which one is costing you 1 million or 5 million or more. And then after you do the quantitative analysis, you pick the higher risk and you go with the risk response. You plan the risks, you come up with a response, and then this is what you will be doing all over your project. Now this is part of your plan. Once the plan is done, you move on to execution. Now in the execution, the first thing you're supposed to do, or actually throughout the project you will be doing it, and that is you manage stakeholder engagement. And then some HR processes in sequence, which is acquire the project team, so bring people on board. Then you develop the project team, so you bring people on board, you train them, and then you manage the project team. So let them achieve the work, let them do the work. These are in sequence, and then at the same time, in parallel, you'll manage communication, you'll perform quality assurance, and you'll conduct procurement. Now quality assurance, this is when you are executing the work. So while you're working on a process, you're making a product, you make sure that whatever you plan in quality, you're executing. So this is the quality assurance. And the last process in your execution itself is develop and manage project work. So if you notice the output of this, it's deliverable. Whatever you plan, the activities you complete in execution, you end up with an end result. It could be a product. This deliverable, you further take it to quality control people. And they are the one who check the product, and they will put a stamp, or they will pass it, or they will give you a quality or quality control signature or quality control certificate that you passed the quality. So this is done in quality control, and then further this document, this deliverable will be called validated deliverable. So this process, this document from deliverable will become validated deliverable in quality control. Now, this validated deliverable, you give it to validate scope people. They look at the product and they find out if this is as per the customer scope, as per the customer requirement. So this, and also you'll sit with your stakeholders. You show them this is the product, that's what you need, that's what we did, is it good? So this is when it will become an accepted deliverable. But you don't give it to a customer right now. You pass it on to the close process. First you close procurement, and then you close your project, and this is where you give this deliverable to the customer, get the sign off, get the receipt, or do the transition. Now talking about your monitoring and control processes. You have many processes, all of them will run in parallel. You have integrated change control, you have monitoring and control project work, you have control risk, you have control procurement, you have control schedule, control cost. All of them could be running in parallel from day one you start the project until you end the project. And this process group is a supporting process group. I think that's all that we have. If there's any other questions, you can always contact me.